Hey y'all,
What's going on, guys?
I'm Jay,
And I am Chris, the bird nerd,
and
and
we
we
are
are the
the
Bird
Burb
Brains.
Brains.
Cheers.
Oh, cheers!
Got
Oh,
your
I don't
cup,
have my
dude.
mug tonight, dude. I don't have my mugs in the wash.
I've got something strong in here to finish my day up. So,
There you go. So, um, no, I'm excited. I mean, I think we kind of took, I guess, a little inside baseball here. We try to record these kind of the week before they release, so I
yeah,
guess there won't be much of a delay. I'll try to put this one out tonight, so there won't be much of a delay for the listeners, but. We recorded and I'll keep it secret for now because this one will come out first, but we recorded a very cool one last night.
yeah,
A loud one.
yes, a loud one. And I guess the only hint I'll give is we strayed outside of the Finch world
We,
with this one. So hopefully it'll reach a broader audience and you guys will enjoy it. Even if you only like to watch it for the Finches, I think this will be a good episode to watch as well. So
well, yeah, and I don't want to get too much into it, but hopefully this is the first of many of
yeah,
those episodes. We've been talking for a long time. We have some other people lined up, or in our heads that we'd really like to talk to. So, um, we'll see how it goes, but
yeah,
really excited about that one.
and
It was
and
fun.
maybe Jay just putting a plug in there. If you guys, we've got a lot of listeners here with the podcast that collect different types of birds, whether it's finches or hookbills. They have different specialties or different levels of experience in breeding. So if that's something that you guys would enjoy in the future, drop Jay or I a PM, and we'd love to see if down the road we could make something like that happen. We're wanting to expand, and broaden this channel as much as we can. And, I think you guys are a special part of that. And it's fun to see other people's experiences and what you guys do and your successes outside of Jay and I's. And I think it just helps us connect with people more and the bird world, right? So,
Absolutely. I'd love to feature some aviaries,
yeah,
some other finch keepers or non-finch keepers. I've got a friend of mine, my friend Michael, if he listens, I think he does. He keeps finches, but he also does hookbills, but he also does like ducks and like
nice.
game quail and stuff. So it'd be cool to get some extra perspectives on stuff like that too. And I mean, I think we'll always be finch centric because that's who we are. But
Yeah.
um, I've never met an animal I didn't like, and in fact, we'll see how it goes. But so we went to PetSmart today, my daughter and I, not for bird stuff. Don't buy birds at PetSmart. In fact, saw a very sick canary there and made me sad. They were like, "Oh, we're going to take it to the vet. Thank you for telling us." I was like, "I wonder if that bird's actually going to the vet. I hope
Yeah.
so." I
It's
told
going
them,
to
I
the
was like,
back
"Look,
dumpster.
right." I was like, "I'll take it home." I live right by the PetSmart. I was like, "I'll take it home. I'll nurse it back to health, and I'll bring it back. Like, I don't want this bird, but I'll like save it." And they're like, "No, we have to take it to the vet." It's like, "Sure, you're going to take it to the vet." But so we're walking, and my daughter looks down and goes, "Oh!" And there's a lizard on the ground inside PetSmart. And at
Wow.
first I thought like, "Oh, they've got one loose." And then I picked it up, or she picked it up first, and she loves catching the little lizards in her backyard. They're two different kinds of anole. So you have the
The brown and
American
the green.
anole or the green anole, right, which is the one that's native here, and then we have the Bahamian anoles that are invasive here. Um, and it was a Bahamian anole, and normally they're much more skittish and hard to catch. And so I was like, "How'd you pick it up?" And I was like, "Hey, let Daddy see that." And super dehydrated, super emaciated, like you could see its hip bones and everything. And I was like, "Oh, this lizard's been stuck in here for months without the ability to get water."
Oh, wow.
So we took it home. I got some water into it tonight, got two crickets into it. So we'll see how
That's
things
awesome.
go. But say all that to say, I've never met an animal I didn't like. So, I mean, if somebody's listening to this and you're like, "Well, I only keep exotic cats," like, we would love to talk to you. Like, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it's like
like, you know,
I've I've dabbled in the world of reptiles just a tiny bit. I've had a couple brothers that have owned like tortoises and have kept them for a long time. As a kid, it's funny you say that the lizard you caught. I used to have two. We always just call them Knolls, but they are Knolls, I think is what you called it,
Mm.
Jay. I had the green variation of them, and I had them for several years actually. They were super tame. I would take them out, play with them, take them everywhere. The poor things, I was a kid, and I'm sure they probably hated life because I really took them everywhere. But they were a lot of fun. My son's got a big bearded dragon. He's sitting right here next to me in his little tank. But
What's
yeah,
his name?
Spike.
Spike. That's what I thought. That's right. It's a good
Yeah.
name. There's a lot of beardies named Spike. I feel like it's a good name though, and you know, we probably should save this for we should probably do a other pets we've had podcast because
Yeah, yeah, I like that.
I have a
Yeah,
long
yeah, same
list.
here.
I mean, I breed dogs occasionally now too, so
That's
yeah,
awesome.
I could. Birds are definitely my number one, but it is certainly the tip of a very big iceberg. If you were the Titanic captain, you'd be going down. So, um, shout out to my mom. My mom,
Yeah, same with mine.
yeah, she was very
Poor
cool and tolerant.
the poor woman had probably every kind of species as far as pets go that you can think of. All different kinds of reptiles, fish, birds, dogs. The only animal that she didn't like were cats. And
Oh,
I think it's because like her mom like grew up with a fear of cats, like a legit fear of cats. So I think for that reason she was always like no to the cats. But I mean, I remember snakes, iguanas, lizards, different types of fish, and we've had multiple different kinds of dogs, obviously birds. We had a pretty big variety of animals
yeah.
in
I
our
mean,
house. Hamsters.
my mom's pretty anti-reptile, but I've still had several. I mean, I've run the gamut. Uh, if you count grandparents that I was with all the time, I've run. I mean, the smallest thing is probably my finches, but all the way up through horses. So,
Nice.
and some stuff in the middle that's like probably illegal, and I think the statute of limitations is over. No animal rights violations or anything, but just
Right.
um, yeah, but we do need to. That needs to be a future
I
podcast
like
topic
that.
for sure.
Yeah, we should.
Maybe I want to get my mom on here someday, and so maybe that'd be a good thing to talk to her about too. Her
Yeah,
perspective on that would probably be funny.
for
Um,
sure.
but today, what are we going to talk about?
I think today we've had quite a few comments and questions, and we wanted to dive into it a little bit in the finch world, feeding live insects and the goods, the bads of insects, the different types of insects, the different types of birds that accept insects, and probably the different type of birds that require insects for breeding, etc., stuff like that. So, trying to cover the world of insects and how they can coincide with our finches or different types or species of finches. So, I think that's what we're going to hit off. So, maybe Jay, if you want to start us off, what kind of finch species out there
Yeah,
require?
I was going to start with the ones that don't, because I think
Yeah, yeah,
are
we
the
could do
ones that
that. Probably
won't
more that don't.
accept.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah,
ones that don't accept or record. So I
aren't
guess I'll
dependent
say
on
this:
them.
almost every finch will eat them
Yeah,
if you offer them.
and there's a positive side to it, right? I mean, you got additional nutrients, vitamins, things like that. So insects are great, but yeah, there's quite a few birds that don't require them to successfully live in captivity.
Right, and I will say this, if you're having trouble breeding birds, a specific pair in general, and now this is finches, this is not hookbills, because the vast majority of hookbills are not gonna, like
Yeah,
Einstein would just look at me like, what are you doing?
yeah,
Um, but almost all your finches, insects can be a thing that pushes them over the edge. So it definitely increases, so they're protein. They have a lot of
yeah,
protein in an insect, right? Timon and Pumbaa. But
yeah,
so if you're looking to sort of up the hormone ante, insects are a great tool to do that. So, but there's some species right off the bat, zebra finches,
yeah.
society finches. Um, think of any others? I guess canaries don't
Canaries,
need them.
Goulian finches,
Don't need
I
them.
I think now don't need them. They did in the past. Probably a good variety of your Australian species don't need them to successfully breed because they've been in captivity for so many generations, but they do readily accept the insects.
Yeah, and especially with Gouldians, I hear a lot that like, oh, Gouldians don't eat mealworms or don't eat insects. I was like, buddy,
Yeah,
I got
yeah.
video
Uh-huh.
every day.
Mine will jump
Yeah.
down to them if I offer them, and I do offer every once in a while. And yeah, they're probably one of my first birds that jump down and go for the mealworm.
hmm
So it's kind of interesting.
Okay, so those are the ones that don't require them. Then we can list the ones that do. So pretty much, it's a safe bet if your bird's from Africa,
Yep.
they definitely require them. Some of your kind of African Asian species, like spice finches, which have a massive range, they're definitely an
Yes.
insectivore for breeding. I've done it without it, but it's less chicks, much harder to do.
You know, and
Um,
it's funny those the African finches, Jay. Even if I've had like my Amadina finches that I have current. They're an African species, and the ones that I have are captive raised, captive bred, but they instinctively go for those mealworms. And I've been able to raise these ones without, live food every day. But the second that I got them, the second I put in mealworms, mom and dad were there. They beat everyone to it. So yeah, most of your African finch species depend on that to successfully rear chicks and to, even put them into breeding condition as well.
yeah, and like all your wax bills, your cordons, your red-billed firefinches, yeah, to get them into breeding condition, they need to see insects, and it's not a few, it's
Yeah,
constant, a lot,
multiple times a
daily.
day
Yeah, but well, yeah, or
if
what
they've
I
got
do,
chicks.
right? What I do to get around that is I just put a heap ton in
Yeah,
because it's too. I try to have everything, and we've talked about this before. My general philosophy is like as few touches as possible, right? Like everything
yeah.
is set up. I don't have to do it all the time, but so um, primarily what I'm feeding right now is mealworms, and so instead of putting in like my birds, so I got about 60 adult birds in the aviary. They will polish off 50 to 50-ish
Yeah,
mealworms in like 20 minutes. But I
yeah,
find that if I put like 150, it'll last all day because everybody gets their mealworm fill, and then a lot of your, less insectivorous birds are like, okay, cool, I ate my couple for the day, but I'm good. And then
right.
you'll see the Africans going back to the tin all
Yep.
day long. And to bring out chicks,
Oh man.
you've got to have insects. They will not, you might get them to lay and hatch, but for them to raise those babies, almost all insects and egg food. Almost
And
no seeds to the babies.
when you talk about cadence, Jay, especially your wax bills, right? Your cutthroats. I would put the Amadina finches in there for the most part. I still think they're close enough to the wild caught birds that they do depend on it readily for successful chick rearing. It can get daunting, right? I mean, that's a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money, especially if you're not breeding, your mealworms or waxworms within, and you're purchasing them and bringing them in. I mean, that could get really expensive if they've got chicks in the nest, like you said. I mean, you're giving them a ton of live food and insects for them to successfully rear the chicks. And when I say that, throughout the US, throughout the world, there are varying levels of what that specific pair is dependent upon, right? I've got a guy
hmm
here in Utah, he successfully bred red cheek cordon bleus without live food. And I said, how in the heck did you do that, right? Because 9 times out of 10, you're not going to
Yeah,
successfully raise,
99 out of 100. Yeah.
right? I've got one pair of Amadina finches that I'm pretty sure I could not give them live food and they'd still raise their chicks. My other pair, if I skip a day of live food giving them mealworms, chicks are toast, right? So it
Right.
just depends, but I would err on the side of more is always better, but sometimes that can become a tasking and daunting chore every day.
And I buy, and so I don't. I guess we could go to there. So, how do you get live food? What do we use? So, right now, again, almost exclusively mealworms. I also feed moths, and then I keep my birds outside. So, spiders, ants, crickets, things like that are getting into the aviary, and I promise you, they're not getting out.
Yeah.
Earthworms,
Yeah.
little flies, like fruit flies, they're getting in, and they're just not getting out.
Right.
It's a bird insect buzzsaw thing out there. So, but I don't get many mosquitoes in my yard. So,
That's good.
um, as far as where I get them, I order them off Amazon. There's a couple different ones, read your reviews, and I buy in bulk. So
Yeah.
I'm buying 3,000 mealworms at a time. Lasts me a little bit less than a month, and it ends up being about 30 some bucks. So it's about a 1 cent per mealworm. So
Yeah.
talk about it being expensive. That doesn't sound like much, but you factor in I'm feeding 150 a day. Okay, so that's $1.50 a day. Now factor in that there's 30 days in a month. So what are we up to now? Like 45 bucks?
Yeah.
And then my breeding season is 6 months long. So that's quite a bit of money. And that's not anything else, right? That's
Right.
just that. Now I have figured out how to get cheap moths for free, which a lot of the African species seem to like. I've got a bug zapper hung up in the inside shed of the aviary, and
Nice.
it zaps the moths. It's like an electric plug-in one. Doesn't It kills them or it stuns them, but it doesn't cook them and it doesn't put any chemicals in them. And then I undo the cup and just dump it out in the bowl in the morning. And some of them are kind of still moving, some are dead, but the birds tend to eat those too. So that's if I had five of them, I could probably make,
That's awesome.
throughout my yard, I could
I
probably
I need to do
do it
that,
for
man.
free. Yeah, so and it helps keep like seed moths down and things like that. So
Right.
that's how I'm doing it. I've also in the past, I've done fly larvae.
Hmm.
So really maggots, but fly larvae is the less scary term. I've also done fruit flies, flightless fruit flies.
Hmm.
Done ant larvae, like
Wax worms.
pupa. I have not done waxworms.
I've
I've
done
done
wax worms before. Yeah.
black soldier fly larvae. I've done
Hmm.
those.
Yep.
Um, and I keep coming back to mealworms. The reason I come back to mealworms is they're really readily available.
Yeah.
Everybody that, if worst case, I can run to PetSmart and get mealworms.
Right.
They're easy to dust with nutrients. I can put prime on it. I can put calcium on it if I want to. And then the adult version, the mealworm is the larvae, then you get a pupa, then you get the adult version. The adult version of a mealworm is just a beetle.
The beetle.
So it's fairly innocuous. If I just get a loose beetle in my bird shed, eventually it gets in the aviary and eventually a button quail eats a beetle. Not the end of the world. When I stopped doing fly larvae because even though I really thought the birds were eating them all of a sudden I just had this explosion of flies. And I was like in my aviary with an electric fly swatter, like swatting flies. And so that, I mean, it was disgusting. So
Yep.
I got I stopped doing that. And then same reason I stopped doing the flightless fruit fly. So they reproduce and in a couple generations they get flight back.
Yeah.
And so I was like, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
A lot of people will do termites.
I
I
was
don't
gonna
do
say
termites.
if you're in Australia, you can just go out in the wild and get some.
Hmm. Well, and in Florida, near where I live too, we have them. But I have homeowners insurance, and my aviary is attached to my house, and I feel like if I ever have a termite problem, and I've been posting videos, here are all these termites, I'm in trouble.
Yeah,
So I
that could
don't
be an
do
issue.
termites. Yeah, I don't do termites for that reason. And then a lot of the other things, um, it's just harder to get, harder to find. So I
Yeah.
keep coming back to mealworms and moths, and I have a lot of success with them.
Yeah.
Plus whatever gets in.
Yeah. And I probably would say, for the longest time, that's one of the reasons why I don't have a lot of wax bills. One, they're expensive. Two, if you want to breed them successfully, you need a constant supply of insects, and that's before this last year and a half really hasn't been an area that I've wanted to explore yet. I love the African species. I think they're beautiful. But if I have them, especially with them being expensive, I would love to try and breed them and continue to, grow that captive population. And some of those requirements have made me shy away from them in the
Hmm.
past. But I have this last year and a half, so I did, been about a year and a half ago, I did try a project and try to raise my own mealworms. I just did a little mini setup, and I think I've posted a couple of videos on YouTube on my channel about it. It's just really small. It's not a grand scale or anything like that. But actually, so far it's been pretty successful. I actually am at the point now where I can throw a handful of mealworms in pretty consistently throughout the week. Still not enough to feed wax bills, but I've just been trying to play with it to see if it's something that I want to explore more. And that's been working pretty good. So that is an option, right? You can raise your own. It does take a little bit longer time unless you buy a really large bulk of it, right? And then start with on a bigger scale. And I just started. I think I ordered 1,000 mealworms, and that's what I started with. And but it's been pretty good. It's nice to throw them in with my Amadina finches, and then I'll throw them in the aviary with the other species every once in a while, and they love them. Right, it's a treat for them. And they eat them, and my button quail love them to death. My parrot finches, uh, I've successfully raised my red-faced parrot finches without feeding live food,
Hmm.
but they love them. I mean, they
And the
literally
blue
wait.
faces need it. They
Yeah,
do need it.
they literally wait at the food dish every morning, and I'll put the egg food in, and then I usually will sprinkle some mealworms on top. And the days that I don't, they literally, it's like they look at me like, what the heck? Like this isn't complete.
Hey, man,
It's missing the cherry on top,
where's my topping?
yeah, and then it's like I throw it in there and they just whoa right to it. They love them. But so you can there are some options out there to raise them on your own. It just depends on your willingness, right? Um, I would put I would put the insects kind of in a similar category as like your reptiles as far as like some of the stinkiness. I mean, there is a little bit of stinkiness that comes from them if you breed on a large scale.
I
So
was
that's
gonna ask, how's the smell?
consideration, and so that's definitely something to think of if you're going to dive into it. But there are options outside of just buying every time. But yeah,
Yeah, I kind of talked with my wife about should we have a mealworm farm, and I told her, look, it's 100, it's $1.50 a day, and her response was pretty much good. We'll keep it at $1.50 a day, which
yeah,
she puts up with an awful lot, so fair
yeah,
enough.
yeah. We'll take
Um,
it.
yeah, and then another one I've seen, like our friend Aladdin, who's Ohana Feathers on Instagram, he's doing mosquito larvae,
Oh
which I've
wow.
seen people do, and that does work well with the Africans. And so what you do is you put out like big planters with like some onions and leaves and smelly stuff in them, and
Uh-huh.
then that attracts mosquitoes like crazy. They lay in there, and then you skim them out
Hmm.
once you see the larva start swimming. And if you have enough of them, you kind of get a constant supply. The downside is obviously you end up there's no way you don't end up increasing your mosquito population.
Right.
And then, um, I mean so that's the downside. But so you skim them out and you serve them in like a shallow dish with just a little
Yeah.
bit of water, and the birds come pick them out of the water. And I've thought about doing that. I've seen people do that. I've seen people do that with flightless fruit flies too to keep them from getting
Uh-huh.
away. But I just find if you have anything that when it hits the adult form, you really don't want it around. You
Right.
don't want to mess with the larval form.
Yeah, and
Um,
I've had birds die from mosquito bites in the past. I mean,
yeah, and I
they
was going to
especially
say
like my
that too.
canaries, they're a little bit more susceptible to it. But yeah,
I was going to say that too. So the flip side of this, and this is just a part of keeping birds outside too,
yeah,
is you're risking disease exposure if you feed live stuff a lot. You don't know really where the mealworms came from. If you're not deworming your birds somewhat regularly, don't feed live food because they're going to bring stuff in with them. They just are. And I've tried to rinse them, stuff like that before, and I kind of gave up on it because I don't think it does anything. I think you're just serving wet mealworms. And
Yeah.
then, so you've got to be, when we refer you back to our treating sick birds episode, if you're keeping birds outdoors, especially, you should be regularly deworming them anyway. You should be
Yeah.
deworming new birds that come into your house, even if you're going to keep them inside. And
Yeah.
then um, you should, but if you're going to feed live food, that's another reason to keep your deworming schedule up.
Yep.
Um, and if you were going to do ant larvae or something like that, you run the risk of having adult ants
Ants.
of whatever
Right.
species that is, which can be dangerous to baby birds and things like that.
For
So,
sure.
all stuff to consider, but I think
And
I've got my live food simplified pretty
yeah,
much, and it's doing the job.
and I would say too, Jay, I think it's with all things, right? All things in moderation. You can give too much um, live food. And I would say in the wax bill's case, if they've got babies in the nest, you probably can't give too much.
Yeah,
You want to overload those suckers. The rest of your species that aren't dependent on live food for successful breeding, but they just enjoy them, it is important to give them live food in moderation if you decide to give them live food because they are high in fatty content. A lot of your mealworms and your waxworms and things like that. And if you're constantly giving them that supply, they can get obese quickly, especially if they're in a smaller cage. It can, lead to, liver issues, things like that down the road. So, it's really just all things in moderation. I put it as a human, right? Your favorite food's ice cream. It's fine to eat it every once in a while, but if you eat it every single day, you're going to get some health effects from it. Especially if you sit on the couch all day too. So just putting that into you know perspective for some of these birds.
yeah, I think that's good to say. And I mean, yeah, it's a lot of protein. It's a lot of kind of more specific nutrients than a broad, well balanced diet, and so you can
Yeah.
you can cause hormone. I mean, I notice. And I don't actually directly feed mealworms to my button quail. They get some of the spillage, but I noticed during the breeding season, the males, it just, when there's insects around, it just revs them up and they're just chasing the females down,
Yep.
jumping on them. So, I mean, it does affect more than just diet.
Right.
Just like people, if you eat unhealthy and you don't move around a lot, you're going to be tired, you're going to be lethargic. If you're a performance athlete and you're eating nothing but protein bars and stuff, you're going to be, like the guy on Parks and Recreation, always ready to, he's always about to go on a run.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, I think you're right. In moderation, certainly tailored to the needs of a species.
Correct. Yeah.
Um, and if you got questions, that's one of those things, we're here for it.
Right.
Um, and I
Yeah.
would also say, be aware of your source. I mentioned that before.
Yeah.
Do a little research on your source. Get eyes on it if you can. Um, there's definitely, just like there are varying levels of people breeding birds and stuff like that, there are definitely varying levels of people breeding insects. Um, you don't want to bring something in to your aviary that you really, some kind of
Absolutely.
bacterial infection or
Or
something. So,
disease or something like that for sure.
yeah, so keep all that in mind. But definitely a powerful tool for breeding.
Yeah, and we've got some great examples, at least in the U.S. I think is it Tina Billings? I mean,
Hmm.
she's got strawberries and other wax bills, and she's got like these like kids swimming pools that are full of dirt, and she goes out there and just rakes it every once in a while, and it brings some of those. I don't know what she's
Hmm.
got in there. I don't know if it's
And I do that in my
mealworms
aviary.
or termites or whatever it is, and she does that and the strawberries just, dive in there and she's got a
Hmm.
few different options of that give the birds insects on a larger scale, things like that. So there are ways to do it successfully and creatively that is fun and takes maybe some of the eeriness of knowing that you have live insects away, but it is beneficial for the birds. So there
Well,
are
and I
ways
do
out there.
that
Yeah.
in my
Do you?
dirt patch. Yeah, so my leftover egg food at the end of the day, I'll just throw, or like the next morning, and usually all that's left at the end is like dried pearly morbead and
Yeah.
seed husks and random stuff. So I kind of toss it in the dirt section, and it becomes sort of like a compost heap. And I've got like a little rake. I've got videos of it, and I'll rake it as part of cleaning. I'll go rake it before I clean. And the birds, yeah, especially the Africans, like my orange-cheeked waxbills. I mean, I won't. I'll be done with half, and it's only the section's only like a 3 by 6 section, and I'll
Uh-huh.
be still there, and they'll be on the ground like, hey. So, and the same with the button quail. So, and
That's
you can't
awesome.
really see it with the naked eye, but if you get down really close, you'll see like little like aphids and stuff crawling around, and they're hammering them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so
And
here's one
and
more thing
it's
too.
enriching for the birds too, right? Gives it, it's
Oh
kind of
yeah.
a sense of like that wild aspect. They're foraging for their food, and it brings that additional enrichment and excitement to the birds too.
Yep, natural behavior for sure, which is the best part of keeping birds outside is you get a lot more of that. But I
Yeah.
will say this too. Do you feed insects at all outside of breeding season?
Um, Only as a treat, and that's
Mhm.
like maybe a few times a month. It's very few and far in between. My parrot finches, some of my African species, I do maybe give it to them a little bit more frequently, but outside of breeding season, I usually try to stick to the wild and take away some of the greens and the insects, and it's a seed diet, and then it helps, when I'm trying to bring them back into breeding condition to introduce the greens and the insects back again. So kind of give them that natural cycle of plenty down to minimum.
Yeah, and say, I mean, I don't even do that. I don't, if with the exception of, so like leading into breeding season, I'll really ramp up insects and then keep those going. And then I don't stop one day, but as the last chicks are starting to fledge and wean, I'll slowly just everything tapers off. I'll switch eventually to every other day and then I'll stop.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I don't, for really for those hormone reasons, I don't do insects at all.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever gets in, during the winter, there's still some insects around. Whatever gets in, and I can't stop that
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
But as far as introducing, yeah, I'm done when breeding season's done.
Yeah. And I think, where you're at, Jay, your climate there, it's fairly warm all throughout the year, or at least warm enough
Mhm.
for some of these insects to live through the winter time. In Utah, when you hit winter, if any of
They're
the,
gone.
yeah, if I've got termites or larvae or mealworms, beetles, if any of those somehow survive, once it gets cold, they're toast. They don't survive throughout the winter, and so it that kind of cuts it off too. But I don't have to worry as much about maybe an infestation of different types of insects. So that's maybe something to take into consideration too on where you live and what your climate is and what would tailor certain insects better or not. So
Right, right. All right. Well, I think that's all I've got. What about you?
yeah, I think that's good. Insects are great. Do your homework, like we always say, especially if you've got, African species, maybe some of your European species that may be more inclined to insects. And, that is a very crucial aspect or key to breeding, successful breeding of some of these species. Definitely a benefit, positive, but does come with its challenges as well. So do your homework, and if you feel like it's not for you, hold off on it, and maybe consider what species of birds you want to keep with that.
We need a merch shirt that says "Do your homework."
Yeah. Hey, maybe we'll get it coming up.
Yeah, and just shout out. Some people are starting to pick up some merch.
Yes.
We really appreciate it. Don't forget, guys, we want more topics. We're starting to run low on a topics list.
Yeah.
So get in the comments, mix it up.
How
If it's
about
something we haven't covered yet, yeah, go ahead.
Jay? If you guys have made it to the end of this video, drop a comment down below, and we'll select a few comments, and we'll start sending some merch out your way. How about
Yep.
that?
Okay. So little comments for merch action.
I like that.
Um, right. Yeah. And we're getting regular listeners, people commenting every video. I really, really appreciate that. This is the coolest thing in the world. Getting to
Yeah,
live
it's
your hobby
awesome.
like this is awesome.
Yeah.
Um, where can they find you, Chris?
All right. YouTube and Instagram, it's Bird Nerd or Bird Nerd 4. And Facebook is Bird Nerd as well. I do sell button quail eggs on eBay. It's Bird Nerd as well. I think that one's like Bird Nerd like 90 because I couldn't get just Bird Nerd. But if you type in Bird Nerd in any of the social media platforms, you're most likely going to find me with some sort of a number on the end, a 4, a 3, or a 90, but Bird Nerd all around.
And if you're looking for one of us and you can only find the other one, like I don't know if you've
Yeah.
realized by now, but we are friends and we can make that happen.
Yeah,
So
reach out for sure.
yeah, so
How about
don't
you, Jay? Where
panic.
can they get a hold of you,
Um,
man?
let's see. I'm on Instagram, the underscore Javiary, Jayviary. Is that right? Yeah.
Yep.
And same on Facebook, the Javiary. Same on Reddit, the Javiary. Same on Threads, on YouTube, the Javiary. So I think I'm pretty. It's either the Javiary or the underscore Javiary on everything.
Got it.
Um, yeah, don't. I'm not going to respond to Threads, but everything else I'll check. Threads is terrible. I'm never going to stop saying that. And yeah, so I do ship. I ship birds, and Chris is about to start shipping, but I'm starting to get in my breeding
Yeah.
season. I am starting to get people reserving their spot
Ah,
on my list for this year of birds they want. So if
maybe
you've been watching my videos,
we need to do a video on that, Jay. What birds do we have that are breeding that will be available come,
right?
the
And
next few months?
I always tell people I never know for sure, right? The birds
Yeah,
get
that's
a
it's a
big
yeah.
vote. So I kind of have three levels. I've got these birds are already born, and I'll take a deposit. These birds I think are going to be born. You can be on the list. These birds I have no idea. I'll still put you on the list, but
Yeah, it
no
could be 5 years,
promises.
but there's no
Right,
guarantee.
right. And that, I mean, and it's just, that's the way it is. That's the way it is
Yeah,
with birds. You could have birds that bred incredible last year and they give you two chicks all year this year and you don't know
yeah,
why, and they give you a bunch next year.
for sure.
Reverse also possible. You could have birds that you got two chicks out of them all year last year. This year, they're a machine. So,
Yeah,
doing what I can, but yeah, so I mean, if you're interested, shoot me a DM on Facebook or a DM on Instagram, and we'll see what we can do. I can ship anywhere in the continental United States. If you're in Hawaii or Alaska, I'm very sorry. Move.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Or
and
come over to the United States to grab them, then you can take them back on your own.
yeah, there you go. I don't know. I was just talking with Alex. It seems like it is possible to mail back and forth to Hawaii. It's just much stricter. It seems like it's much easier to
Right.
mail from Hawaii here than it is to mail
Yeah.
here to Hawaii.
And
Um,
I think Hawaii is similar, especially with birds, as far as birds that you can't have that are
yeah,
illegal to have
they're
just due to their
real worried
climate.
about invasives.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they also have like St. Helena's waxbills are invasive all over
Oh,
the
wow.
islands, or
Yeah.
some of the islands.
Yeah.
So they're even strict about what you can
Javas.
do island to island.
Right.
Um, so yeah, but if you have questions about that stuff, reach out. We're definitely, I'd rather send my birds to other bird brains
100%.
than people off the street. So, or to the pet store. So reach out. We'll make something work. Mention the podcast. Maybe I'll cut you a sweet deal. Um,
I like
but I
that.
think that's it for live food.
Yeah. Let us know what else. If we missed something, guys, drop a comment down below and we'd be happy to respond to you. So,
Yeah, mix it up. All right.
all
Thanks,
right.
y'all. We'll catch you in the next one.
See ya.